Only eating 1200 calories per day or less and still not losing weight, this video is for you. Here are the chapters for this video. Don't forget that this is also available in podcast. Let's dive in. First, let's talk about what happens when you eat fewer calories than your body requires. I'm sure you've heard about this concept. You know, if you eat a little bit less and move a little bit more, you end up losing weight. If you eat in a deficit, you burn more calories than you consume, you end up losing weight. You know, that's the thermodynamic rule or whatever it's called in English. But our bodies are a little bit more complex than that. There's got some interesting effect to actually eating in a deficit, especially in a very big deficit. In fact, research shows that when you eat in a calorie deficit for a long period of time, your BMR, your basic metabolic rate, basically your metabolism, actually goes down, lowers to match the deficit, so it doesn't have to be in a deficit anymore. Think about it this way. If every month you earn 2K, you're gonna spend the 2K, right? But if the next you only earn 1200, you're not gonna spend 2K, you're gonna spend $1200, euros, whatever your currency is. That's exactly what the body ends up doing as well. The Minnesota starvation experiment in 1940s is often cited here to actually illustrate that. So volunteers were severely calorie restricted, they lost weight, but only to a point. Just like I said, their metabolism went down, they lost muscle mass, and actually had some emotional distress effects. They actually became obsessed with food. They had really intense mood swings, and since they had not the energy, they actually reduced their physical activity and their TDEE in general, making the metabolism even lower. It's obviously an extreme example, but it illustrates what a calorie deficit over a long period of time, even if it's moderate, like potentially in your case, can have on your body and your mind. Now I wanted to talk about the starvation mode. The idea that your body holds on to fat when you're facing extreme starvation, extreme hunger, extreme deficit. So that is a little bit of a myth. Here is the truth. Your body isn't going to magically hold on to the fat. And I know that's something I used to say, but I learned. What happens is metabolic adaptation. A key study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism by Dr. Lynn Redmond found that adaptive thermogenesis, which is basically when your BMR, what I was explaining you, decreases, happens as a result of a long-term calorie deficit. As I just said, your body doesn't really like being in the deficit, doesn't really like change in the first place, so it's going to adapt to your deficit and just say, okay, well, no, I'm gonna match that because I don't wanna be in a deficit, it's not comfortable. So you're gonna burn fewer calories at rest, you're gonna lose some muscle mass because muscle is metabolically active, so it burns a lot of calories, so it's gonna be like, that goes, just to match the deficit you're at. With that being said, it doesn't mean that your body is trying to sabotage you, far from it. It's basically a survival mechanism here that has been going on for millennia. Don't be mad at your body, it's definitely trying to keep you alive. I also wanted to point out at this 2016 study. So basically they followed after the Biggest Loser, the people that actually lost weight, and they saw that the contestant actually had a lower metabolism even years after that initial weight loss happened. So yes, your metabolism can slow down, but that doesn't mean that your body stops burning fat altogether. It's the preferred fuel. What it's doing is making your body more efficient to match the deficit you're setting it at, making it harder and harder to lose the weight. You're gonna love this. It is most specifically the case for women, mostly due to hormonal but also reproductive health factors. And that's why women tend to have a higher body fat percentage than men. We actually need that to be able to have our periods and then, you know, carry a baby and so on. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that extreme caloric restriction could lead to losing your periods, which I've experienced myself. I'm a little bit of a scientist here, but also reduced estrogen levels and just overall harming your health. When I was on those severe calorie deficit, I lost a lot of my hair, I definitely was skinny fat, I lost my energy, I was bloated all the time, I lost my periods for a while, and that was just not a fun time. It's a lot of research here, but let's apply it to you. What if you are eating 1200 calories per day and still not losing weight? What's going on? It's time for a little bit of a calorie deficit reality check here, because I know a lot of you are going to come in my DMs, say, I'm eating 1200 calories every day, I've been doing that for this amount of time, still not losing weight, what the fuck is going on? To that, I always answer, but are you actually in a deficit? Many people, and I've seen a few studies about that, often underestimate the quantity of food that they eat. And a study by Lichtman published in the New England Journal of Medicine showed that participants who claimed eating 1200 calories a day were actually closer to 2000 calories. You see the problem here. That's the biggest barrier to weight loss, is when you think you're in a deficit but you don't track accurately, and you're not actually in a deficit but you think you're eating 1200 calories when you're not. So here are a few reasons as to why you think you're in a deficit but actually are not. Mindlessly snacking. You know, for example, let's say you have kids, they don't finish their plates, you just finish their food. You don't log that in, that's calories. Or you grab a handful of nuts here, or you taste a little bit of the food that you're cooking. These calories add up fairly quickly, and that's when you go from being in a deficit to actually being in maintenance or in surplus. I think a lot of you would be actually surprised how much calories they're eating if they were tracking more accurately. Binges, weekend or evening binges. Let's say that you feel like you've been really good all week long, you've just eaten salads and rabbit food and an apple all day, right? At the end of the day or on the weekend when you've got social events and so on, you tend to go in fuck it mode, I'll start again on Monday, and eat so much more food than you would usually do if you weren't on a diet. That means that even if Monday through, let's say Thursday, you are in a 1200 calorie deficit, if you're eating 3, 4, 5,000 calories Friday, Saturday and Sunday, the average is going to be your maintenance or even a surplus. And that's why you don't lose weight. Another one here is hidden calories in drink. Adding some sugar and milk to your coffee or alcohol, obviously, that again adds up fairly quickly. So don't forget to count your calories in drinks as well. If you're only eating black coffee, don't bother. If you're only eating tea with nothing in it, don't bother. But if you add creamer, if you add sugar, if you add milk, or stuff like that, then that's gonna count. Here is another one that is pretty similar to the drinks. When you don't count or don't count accurately the butter, the oil, and all the stuff you use to cook, or even the sauces that you add to your food for that matter. If you forget to include these, especially when it's like a tablespoon of oil, like it's 120 calories, I believe, depending on the oil, like it adds up really quickly. So if you just do it without actually tracking it, that's when you easily end up in surplus. Now that sort of goes back to what I was saying, but if you're inconsistent with your portion sizes and don't use a scale, that's when you have to eyeball the food you're eating, and that's when you can be off. What I tell my client is stuff like protein, complex carbs, fats are good to actually weigh, but stuff like veggies, for example, aren't that necessary. Worst case scenario, you're off by 20 grams, and that's going to be like 5 calories additional. That's not a big deal. Of course, you can weigh everything, but if you don't feel like weighting everything, I recommend at least doing the fat, definitely doing the complex carbs, you know, rice, bread, and so on, and the protein, just to make sure you're getting enough of that. The next two aren't really your fault, but underestimated restaurant meals, and that's because you just can't really know, right? When you just look at a food, you have to sort of guess and eyeball the quantities, and that's because you've got sauces and oils and all of that in it, then you can't really know what is in there and how it's made and so on, so that's why it's difficult. You can do it, like most of my clients have as a non-negotiable. I need to also go out and see my family and see my friends and actually socialize, and I still want to lose weight. We do it, so that's not much of a problem if you know how to deal with it. I definitely recommend trying to overestimate a little bit, because if you know that most people, even nutritionists, by the way, even people who are registered dietitians and so on that actually know about nutrition, tend to underestimate their calories. So you want to overestimate it a little bit, because that's sort of counterbalanced to about right. And the other big one that you don't really have control over is if you do tend to eat a lot of packaged food, it is good to know that packaging food labels are legally able to be up to 20% off the calories. So they may say, hey, we are 100 calories, when in fact they're higher. They could be lower, but I feel like most of the time they would be higher. That is good to know. It's not always 100% accurate. And the last thing is when you overestimate how much exercise you got. You know, in MyFitnessPal, it sort of changes the calculation of how much food you're allowed for the day if you do log in some exercise. What I tell my clients is always to disregard that. Like if we set your deficit at 1800, even if you exercise and burn 200 calories, it doesn't mean that you can eat 200 calories extra, because that means that you're not in a deficit anymore if you do that. So that makes no sense. I don't know why MyFitnessPal does that, because when you calculate your maintenance, you already include the exercise that you're supposedly getting. So why would you, like, I don't know, I have no idea why MyFitnessPal does that. Point being, if you're overestimating or if you're compensating for the exercise, then you're just going to end up in maintenance. I know that right now your question is, okay, what do I do? First off, the obvious one is to analyze the list of the stuff I've just given you about what could be going wrong in your approach, especially in your tracking, and fix it. I've given you tips, so that's the first place to start. And not mindlessly stacking, not eyeballing, not tracking everything, not binging. If you want to drink your calories, at least be mindful of that and add that to your intake as well. This is already a huge step in the right direction, because as I've just said, most people who think they're in a deficit actually are not. Now, what if you are 100% sure you're in a deficit and still not losing weight? As I've said, the problem could be that your body just lowered your metabolism to not being in deficit anymore, especially if you've been doing that for a while. I usually recommend 3 months and then reverse dieting. I'm gonna go a bit deeper into that. The body does get used to the deficit, or at least decide, okay, I'm done with being in a deficit. I'm gonna, match that, and lowers your metabolism, whether it's with less, energy expenditure, or it lowers your muscle mass, stuff like that. So that would mean that you're not in a deficit anymore, and you would have to eat lower, and the body would match, and lower and lower, and it's just that vicious cycle of trying to eat lower to lose the weight, but it's not gonna work. So here is what I recommend. Usually when my clients start, we only work within the 3/4 months calorie deficit. I don't like for it to go for too long, but when they start plateauing around that time, that is when we introduce the reverse diet phase. And that basically allows them to get back to a higher metabolism without gaining fat. Now, obviously, when we lost the weight, it was a healthy deficit. We had a high protein intake to maintain muscle mass, so your metabolism doesn't go too low in the first place. You even build some, so you end up lean and tone. So the whole process of actually, I'm gonna link the video that I have here. The whole process of actually losing weight is really important. How you do it, what you do, and what you don't during that. So here is how you should do the reverse dieting phase. Ideally, I would go on any calorie calculator online and just figure out for your weight and age, height, level of activity, what your maintenance should be at, and track fucking accurately what you've been eating. And 50 calories by 50 calories every maybe 7-10 days, you want to increase your intake. Let's say you're eating 1800 when you start the reverse dieting, 1850. Next week, 19. Week after, 1950, and so on until you get up to the number that you've basically decided was going to be your metabolism, which often is a good bet. Now, if you lost the weight in a very unhealthy way, I cannot recommend more to just go back there and actually do some resistance training as well to build back the muscles that you may have lost along the way. Track your progress in terms of energy, how you feel, performance, but also your weight. Typically what it's going to do is sort of doing, so if you eat a little bit more, it's going to go up and then go back down and stabilize where you were, and go back up and go back down and slightly stabilize. That's why I do it in stages, 50 calories by 50 calories, so your body sort of gets used to, oh, we're eating a bit more food, but it doesn't mean that I have to store it as fat. So that's why you want to do it weekly instead of going all the way up, for example, overnight. Yeah, definitely weightlifting, cannot recommend it more. It's going to help you maintain your lean body mass, end up lean in tone, and build back up your metabolism. So that sort of means that for the time being, if you are in a deficit and not losing weight, do the reverse dieting phase. You may not gain weight. It sort of depends how you lost that weight in the first place, how big of a deficit, how long, and so on. But I would definitely recommend putting the idea of, I want to lose weight, a bit to the back burner and just say, okay, I'm gonna go back to a healthy metabolism and then lose the weight the healthy, sustainable way. Again, this is the training, watch it, you'll know everything you have to do. And before you complain, oh, but it's so long, time will pass anyways. So you can struggle for the next 6 months, years, however long, with eating very low calories, maybe binging, maybe not, maybe this, maybe that, health issues and so on. Or you can decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to reverse diet, increase my metabolism, and then go back down to lose a bit more fat, which is what I always recommend, which is what I've done. I mean, I did it the hard way, I had no choice. But yeah, I mean, look at these women. The process that I've shared with you all worked for them, regardless of their age, their level of fitness, their history of diet, their metabolism, all of that. And a few of them actually told me, it's crazy how I've reached that way, but I was skinny fat then, so I gained it all back. And when I actually lost the weight in a healthy way with weight training and so on, I feel so much better. I have so much more energy and I don't look skinny fat. So do it the right way, please. The takeaway here is definitely that eating too little can work against you. Thinking you're eating too little when in fact you're not will also work against you. So that's why you have to be very aware and very precise and very strategic with what you do to lose weight. So if you're not in a deficit, go in a healthy deficit, watch the training. And if you have been in deficit for a long time and haven't lost the weight, reverse diet, then healthy deficit. Protein intake, resistance training being so key. If there is one thing you take from this video, I really hope that's the one thing. And if you're someone who wants to lose 20-30 pounds within the next 180 days without starving yourself, spending hours doing cardio every single day, without saying goodbye to your favorite food every social event ever, and of course without getting the weight back, highly suggest you apply for one-on-one coaching down below. It's basically book a call. We'll see if and how I can help you. If I can, I will 100% welcome you into my program. I've done it myself, my clients are doing it, so why not you? That was pretty much the end of this video. I hope it was not as chaotic as shooting it was. I hope the editing is going to go a bit better, but yeah, you know, if you like this video, like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.